Hi folks, this is Rose from In Rose's Garden, and today we're going to make a necklace using some of the remaining beads from my September design ambassador kit from JJB Beads. These beads include some from the Sunset Goddess bead mix and the Day of the Dead bead mix. So anyway, the necklace we're going to make is this one here that I have drawn. Don't know how well you can see that. When we turn down, I'll put it up again. But hopefully, I think it will turn out really pretty. And I hope you enjoy making it. I know that I am looking forward to seeing what it looks like when it's all done. And I hope that you do too. Well, let's turn down and get to work on it. Okay, here's a picture I've drawn of the necklace we're going to work on. I designed this some time ago, but I hadn't got around to making it. It is using my JJB Beads Design Ambassador Kit for September. That included Sunset Goddess bead mix, Day of the Dead bead mix, and the little illuminating yellow Toho seed beads. This is going to be a little wire bridge we're going to make, and we have a caged bead down here at the bottom. So let's get started on this. If you'll recall from the design I just showed you, we have some wraps up here at the top. This little caged bead is going to be going down at the bottom on a wire bridge. And then I have made up two sets of the beads that I want to use to go down from the rings down to the wire bridge. So let's get out some beading wire, and we'll get started on that. I'm going to use Softflex Gold on this. This is an older strand. They do still sell gold, but it's not quite the same as this. But that's all right. It still works. And we'll need, of course, some crimp beads. Well, tubes. I always use tubes. Oops, banging beads. So we'll get out some of those. And we'll hook the wire to the first set of rings. And then we will string the beads on either side. Then we'll have to make the wire bridge before we can finish up the bottom portion of this. Oops, that's a lot more than I need. Only need 4 actually, so we'll get these put away. Okay, put the bottle away. This can go to the side. I'm not exactly sure how much wire I'm going to need for either side, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a bead stopper on one side, and then I'm going to string the beads on this and see how long they end up being. So the first thing I need to do is drop my beads out of my little tub here and set them in the manner that I have more or less decided I'm going to string them. These will be at the bottom. No, that's going to be in the middle. This is the bottom here. So we'll go with this pretty peachy orange and this really cool pave-like wrapped bead here at the bottom. And then this bead is going to be up closer, and we're going to have, if you'll remember from our drawing, we're going to have these on either side with the little bead cap. Then a crystal rondelle spacer and the little yellow ones here. Then we're going to put one of these little disco balls here. The other one is going to go up the other side with this bead up here. This will be here with one of the lotus, this pretty purpley one, and then we'll go like this. So let's string this up. Love this bead, it's so pretty. And if you see it's got a coating on it that makes it sort of yellowy on this side but sort of purple on this side, which is really pretty. Okay, I'm trying to decide if I want to put any more beads up here. So I'm going to put a bead stopper on this side because I do like this pattern. We're going to give it some space. And then I'm going to move this up to right about here and cut this wire loose. And then we'll string the other side. But now we know about how much wire we want, so we can just cut it off. Okay, now I'm going to get a bead stopper for the other side here, and we'll string the other side up. And let's compare. Looking good. They look fine. Let's get another bead stopper to put on this other side, and then we will see about making the bottom. Okay, after giving it a little thought, I have decided I want a few more beads on the end, so I've dug out some. We will be putting this on this side and this on this side. So let's put those on. Maybe. Yeah, I like that. So let's put it on the other strand now. And now that we've got the two strands finished, we can hook them to the one ring. So let's get a couple of the rings out and a couple of the crimp tubes out. And we're going to crimp this one side to the ring. So slide a crimp tube on. Oh, come on, baby. There we go. Wrap it in the ring. the crimp on and see if it, hopefully it'll fit through the bead, well, at least one of the beads. This one will. I think actually we'll go through this one as well. There we go. And now pull her up tight. Well, we don't want it too tight. We want this ring to be able to move, so that's probably good right there. And let's crimp that up with the magical crimpers. Now the magical crimpers have a little divot in the middle of them, and that's where you put your tube in and squish it down, and it makes like this little square shape. So then you put it in again with it turned sideways and squish again, and then just go around it in a circle a few times so you get a nice round little bead there. Then give it a tug test. It's fine, and then we're going to cut this excess wire off. Now push all of your beads up to the other side and tighten up your now we're going to do the other side. So first is the crimp tube in the ring through the crimp tube, the bead, and the first little, well, I call these lotus. I don't know if they are lotus, but they look like lotus. So. Get hold of these wires and pull it up. Now I think I may have it too tight here. We want to be about the same as the other side. So let's compare. Now it needs to go up some. That looks pretty good. So now we crimp this by putting again the crimp tube inside that little divot. And push down, turn it, and go around in a circle. Tug test. It's good. Now we got to get it back through these two beads and then cut it. Here we go. On 1 and 2. Cut the excess string. Well, wire. Oops, let that one fly. And then bring the crimp, your saver, up to the bead strand. So now we have our 2 strands with our rings up at the top. And we're ready to go on to the next step. Place these up towards the top. And the next step we're going to do is we need to make the wire bridge at the bottom. So we need to get some square gold wire. This is Softflex square. I do believe that Jesse James has some Beadalon square on their site, but the only thing I saw was silver when I was working. So hopefully they'll get both colors soon. I did order some of their square, but I haven't got it yet. And we need about 7 inches of wire here. So, right about here. Now I'm going to put the wire back in its package and put it away so I don't get it messed up. Now the next thing I'm going to do is, if you look, this one side has got a V notch on it. I don't know that you can see that because of the way the flush cutters work, because they're flush on this side, and then they're in a little bit of a V here. So you need to take and cut that little bit of a notch off. Careful not to cut yourself. Cutters are very sharp and they'll have no problem cutting through your flesh. So do be careful when you're cutting with your flesh cutters. Now I've got two things we want to do here. Number one, we want to mark this at about 3.5 because that's the middle point. So I'm going to get a Sharpie and mark that. Come here, Sharpie. So middle's about right here. And then I'm going to twist this wire because it really looks cool when it's twisted. Now you can twist your wire with two pair of pliers, but one holding one end with one and twisting with the other. But I have this little pin thing, which makes it really easy to twist wire. You hold it with one side, your wire goes in this notch here, if it wants to go in, that is. Okay, just get a little bit in and then push this up to tighten it. And then then take your pliers, hold the other side. Oop, come on baby, hold. And just twist this side with this little pin. And twist it till you get about as many twists as you want in it. Don't twist it so much that you break the wire though. Just about where I want it. There we go. See all the pretty little twists in that square wire? Isn't that great? Then you take this back out of the pin and straighten it some. We'll put these things aside now. I don't need the pin anymore. And now the next thing we need to do is bow this into its bridge. In order to do that, you can do a number of things. You can bow it from here just with your fingers. You could wrap it around a little tube or something like this. Or you can use a wire bending mandrel, which is what I'm going to do. So we're going to put this right here, and we're going to bend it around till it comes all the way around. And even though that was in the middle, that one doesn't look like it's like they're the same length. Well, maybe they are. Anyway, the next step after bending is now you want to put your caged bead on here, because if you don't put it on now, it's not going to go on unless you put it on with a jump ring. Now these caged beads are mainly welded, but you want to try and find one of the spots that's really secure looking, and just push your bead through and let it hang like this. See, isn't that pretty? And the next step is simply to take hold of your wire. I'm going to take hold of my pliers so I've got it still, and you want to twist these two wires together 2 or 3 times. And there we go. So let's straighten these up to each other a little bit here. Isn't that nice? And the next thing is you want to bow these little ends here. Just ease them around with your fingers. And then we're going to put a loop on the ends to so that the beads can hook onto this. But first I'm going to measure the arms and make sure they're the same length. So let's get our ruler out. And you'll notice that from here to here we're about, it looks like 1.25 inches. And this is one side's a little bit longer. Well, actually this is more like 1 1/8 inches, I think. Yeah, 1 1/8 inches. So if we put this spot on the 1/8, you'll see we're about 1/8 of an inch too long on this side. So we're going to cut this little bit off. making sure our flush is to the inner side. And so we now should both be about 1 1/8 inches. So let's check that again. And it looks like we are. So that's good. So we'll put our ruler aside again. And the next step is to roll the loops on either side of these. In order to roll the loops, I have got out my bell making pliers. I'm going to use this is the smaller size. I'm going to use the bigger of these two, and we'll just take hold of it, the wire, and roll the loop. There's one side. Now we'll do the other. Oops, that wants to curve a little bit on me, but we got that. Okay. There we go. And now if you want this a little bit more curved, you can always make it do so by just bending with your fingers. Warm it up a little bit in your hand and just bend it till it's about where you want it. You can see this one is up above the wire here. So we want to get that straight. There we go. Same with this one. Alrighty. And now for the next step, which is to hook the wire from the bottom of our bead strand on to our cage, or bridge, I should say. So let's do that next. Even though we did measure these, this side still looks a little bit longer than this side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just clip a teeny weeny touch of this loop off. And then we're going to take our bell making pliers, and we're going to push that loop in a little more there. And there, I think that's better. Let's get this even. Okay, now that that looks to be pretty even, and our little piece is finished here, now we're going to hook on our bead strands. Got to get rid of my odds and ends stuff there. Okay, so let's put these aside for a bit. Well, they need to stay close. And I need to find what we did with those little crimp tubes. And I believe I put them in this tube here. Yes, I did. Here they are. So we'll dump those out on the mat. And we're going to, now you can do this one of two ways. You can just make a loop and then open up the loop from your bridge and just slide it in like you would a jump ring. Or you can do it straight to the bead strand. I find it easier just to make a loop and then just open that up. So, but you can do it either way. But I am just going to make a loop and put the loop. Oh, I guess it would help if I went through the crimp bead. These little technicalities, right? So we want to grab our crimp bead, go through the crimp, up and through a bead, and then pull her up close. Now when you're doing this, got to remember you do need to have a small loop for it to hook into. You don't want it too small because you don't want to lose your mobility in your necklace, because let's face it, we do want our necklace to move for us. So that's pretty good. Twist it around a little bit when before you crimp to make sure that it's got some movement still in it. So now let's get this in the crimp and crimp it down. Test. Okay, cut the extra wire. Being careful to cut the extra wire, not the original, the one you need. Now that we have this finished, what we need to do is to open up one side of the bridge. Doesn't matter which side. There is no technical back and front on this. Slide your loop in and then close your little hoop back up just like you would any jump ring. And there's one side hooked up. Now we need to do the other side. So to do the other side, we do exactly the same thing as we did with that one. Put on our crimp bead, or tube I should say, back through. Through the bead, come on out. Tighter up. Now we want to compare our loops. That looks close. And crimp. Come on, you stop rolling around on me. Boy, she's being stubborn. There we go. Got it that time. Pull. Cut this extra piece off. And now we need to hook this to the other side. So again, we just simply take our pliers and open up one of these little rings, slip our bead strand on, and close it back up. And there, the bottom portion of our necklace is done. And it will hang like this. Isn't that cool? Okay, next step is to do the connections up at top. Now what I'm going to do here is I am going to make a little seed bead rope, and then I'm going to wrap it 2 or 3 times from ring to ring. So we'll have a ring up here, and then a little seed bead rope wrapped about 3 or 4 times here. The original plan was to use the illuminating yellow seed beads and some white seed beads, which had a touch of purple in them, to make my bead strands up here on the top. But when I got the yellow out, well, as you can see, it doesn't match this yellow at all. It's way too bright. So I decided that really wasn't going to work. So instead, I have pulled out some really pretty dark yellow that was in a set that had all colors. So I just pulled that color out. And then I have some orange, which I think will match all right. It's not perfectly matched, but I think it's close enough to these oranges that it will work. So my original plan was to do 6 loops of my seed bead wrap, but with these are number 6s rather than 11s, which was what I was planning on using. So I think that 6 wraps might be too thick, so I'm only going to make 4. So we'll get some bead stringing wire out, and we'll start stringing some beads, and we'll see how that looks. Put the necklace aside while we string up some seed beads. We're going to use some bone. And we will, I'm not exactly sure how long I want to make my loops, so we're going to just put a bead stopper on one side. And then we will just start stringing some beads and see how they look. I'm going to put a couple of these, well, probably more than a couple, of these little gold spacers in amongst my beads so that it will give some texture, as well as when I crimp these, they are going to add some they will look a lot like the crimp. So I'm going with 5 orange, 2 yellow, another 5 orange, and then one of the golds. And in a little bit, we'll compare it to the necklace and see if that's going to work all right. Okay, that's what the strand is looking like so far. Let's bring our necklace back and see if it's going to match in all right. Well, as I said, the oranges and the yellows are a little bit different. But because I have some different oranges in here, I still think this is going to work all right. So we're going to go ahead with this, and we will just string up enough to make 4 loops. And I'll show you what I mean with that after we get some more on here. So what we're going to do is we're going to loop these back and forth like this about 4 times, and then we're going to through both sets of rings, one on top and one on bottom, like this, to make a wrap between the sections. So let's make some more of these, and let's get this finished up. So this is probably about half of what we need, so we will continue going and get the other half done. So it's going to fold like this and go over the ring, both rings, and then connect to this ring on the necklace, like so. So let's decide if we have enough. And if we decide we do, then we will connect it together. Yes, I think this is going to be what I want. So what we need to do now is we'll cut this wire loose on this side. First, I'm going to crimp this one. So put a bead stopper on this one so I don't have to worry about it breaking. And maybe before I cut this loose, I will, hook this up. I'm going to get another length of wire out for the other side. And now we'll put this with this. Now what we need to do is we need to take a crimp, of course we'll need two, one for both sides. This one aside for this, and then what we'll need to do is put the crimp on one end of the bead strand. Then we're going to re-hook this so we don't have to worry about it coming off. Bring our necklace back in play. And then what we're going to do is take this other ring, and we want to wrap our bead strand, which of course we're going to have this off because it's not going to go through here with this on. And we're going to go back and forth through the rings. Like so. Oops, not sure you can see that. We'll put this up here further. So we're going to go back and forth through the rings until we come together twice, like so. Now what we've got to do is we take the other crimp up, the other bead stopper off, and we go through this crimp from this side with the bead wire. Now we'll push it to the middle so we can put beads on either side. Of the wire. Now this wouldn't have worked with the number 11s. We would have had to have cut it right at the crimp. But with the 6s, we don't have to do that. And this just fell off on the other side, so we're going to have to get it on again. This does get a little bit tricky because you want to get it on both sides like this, so the crimp is sitting in the middle of these beads. Now we need to get hold of the ends. Come here, end. And once we have hold of both ends, we want to pull it together like so. And now that it's together, we want to give it some room to work with here so it doesn't get too tight. And then we have to get our crimp pliers and crimp this bead. Being careful because, of course, the beads on either side are glass. Okay, let's see. I need to tighten that up some. Okay, we came loose, so we have to tighten it back up some. But we don't want it to be too tight, but we don't want it to be too loose either. That should do it right there. Okay. Now we'll turn and crimp again until we have our little round bead. Now we pull, tug test, it looks good. So now what we want to do is trim those two strands up. And now we have this. Now, because we don't want it to be always, it wants to twist up, and that's all right, because it's not going to sit. We want it to have some kind of conformity, so what we're going to do is we're going to make some large jump rings to put through the middle of this. But first, we're going to work on the other side's bead strand. So let's get the other wire out that we cut and get started on the other side. So back to the pattern. And I am going to finish this off camera because I know that this is about as fun as watching paint dry, stringing up a whole bunch of tiny seed beads. We'll come back when I have this section ready to put on the rings. Okay, now I have got all of the beads strung. Put the little crimp tube on this side and bring that in. Now we need to bring in our necklace again and get out the other ring. And now we're going to string our beads between the two. So we'll start on one, string through, go to the other, string through again, Now we have two loops on here. I'm going to string through this one more time, and this one more time. Now we've got all the beads strung, and we need to make these two meet in the middle. So we take this off, push the wire through the crimp and 4 or 5 beads, pull it in some. Now we want to get this wire through 4 or 5 on this side. And I think it just fell out the other side, but that's all right, we can get that fixed. Okay, we're just going to go through the orange. So we've got that side. And now we need to make sure we have this side still in place. And we didn't. As you can see, we've got the beads out. So holding that, I'm going to put a bead stopper on this side to hold the wires so the beads can't slide back out again. Then we'll go over here and get these beads back on. Then we'll take the wires and pull them up. Okay, now that we've got them pulled up, we want to crimp that bead in the middle. So carefully bring it in, your crimper plier, get your tube in there, check to make sure you're not too loose, and crimp. Now go back in, turn it, crimp again. Now let's do this 3 or 4 times. Do a pull test. Seems fine. And trim these 2 ends. Almost didn't see the other one. I was like, where did it go? And now we're ready for the next step, which is we're going to put some we're going to make some jump rings and put them around the 2 strands of beads. Our next step is to make some jump rings that are going to be big enough to go over all the strands of seed beads up here. And we want probably, I don't know, 3, 4, maybe even 5. We'll see how it looks once we get a 3 on and if we want more or not. And so what we need to do is make some large jump rings. Now, because this is twisted wire down here, I think I want to make some jump rings with some square twisted wire instead of just plain straight jump rings. So let's get out the wire again. Oops, don't want that one. And our square wire. And let's just make, I don't know, 8 inches and see how many jump rings we get out of that. Cut off this little end here. Get the wire out, and we want 8 inches of wire. So there's 8. So we'll trim that out of here. And we will put our wire away and make our jump rings. But first we want to twist it because we want it to look more or less the same as the bottom in our little twisted piece here. So let's get our pin out and our pliers, and we'll get this wire twisted. So here's the pin. Now, like I said, you don't have to use a pin. If you've got one, great. They're really quite handy. They hold the your wire in place really nicely. Sometimes you have to force your little it open a little bit so that you can get your wire in there. But come on, baby, go in. There we go. Up with you. Like I say, you can use 2 pair of pliers, one holding one end and just holding straight, and the other where the pin is, and just keep and doing the twisting. Okay, I think that's twisted enough. So then we have our twisted piece of wire. So now we need to wrap it around and make some large jump rings. I'm going to use the large bell of my larger bell making pliers, and because this is not twisted at the end, this will probably get cut off. In fact, I'll just do it right now. It's actually sort of flat from having been in the pin twist. Let's see how many jump rings we can get out of this particular piece of wire. If you've never made jump rings, it's really pretty simple. You just take your wire, wrap it around your bail like I'm doing, open and closing all the way as you go around. Let's see how many I have here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That should be enough for what we want to do. Now we have to cut these loose from each other. Now this is the straight end where it was in the pliers on this side, so we'll cut that off right now. Now when I make these, I butt the plier up to the one that's already cut, and then snap. Do the same until you get all your pieces done. And as you can see, this one had a little extra wire, and that's fine. Just flip it out. Now, because these are going to have the V notch on one side and the regular square notch on the other, you're going to want to go in and carefully trim just the V notch off. So you're just cutting a little bit of wire. Now once you have all your V notches trimmed off, your next step is to even these back out, because dimes to dollars, you've got a gap. So take 2 pair of pliers and just ease them together like you would any jump ring until your gap is together. That one didn't take long at all. 3. Four. Okay, and now the jump rings are made. Next step is to put 3 jump rings on either side over all 4 strands of the beads. So you'll just open up like a jump ring and then place them over the top of these strands. So let's just open one up, and yes, I know we just closed them. Go through all 4 strands. Now this might get a little bit tight. Just be careful. Make sure you have them all in there, and close your jump ring back up. And you do that with all 3 until you get all 3 jump rings on either side done. Okay, and now here's jump ring number 3 on this side. And as soon as we get this 3rd jump ring on this side, then we will go over and do the 3 on the other side. Oops, wants to slide off. Okay. Now you do have to be careful because sometimes the bead strand wants to escape. One of the bead strands will want to escape out of the jump ring as you're closing it up, just like that one just did. So we'll have to push that back in place and then finish closing our jump ring up. So now we have the 3 jump rings on this side. We're going to move this one down so it's friendly with its buddies down there. Now, these are pretty tight, so surprisingly enough, it doesn't want to move that well. So we want to get this down with its friends. And as soon as they're all together, then this side is done. Come on, babies. Now if you need to, you can always loosen the jump ring back up, but you don't want to do that very many times because the jump rings weaken as the more you open and close them. Okay, this baby is still not wanting to come together there. Okay, so that side is done. And now we're going to go and put the jump rings on the other side. So let's switch these up. We'll go over here, get the jump rings, and we'll get these 3 jump rings on this side, and then this section will be done. Now sometimes like this one, you may have to finesse it a little bit. It doesn't want to come together, so we're going to make it. There we go. In fact, we'll make an intentional gap between them. Might be better. Let's see. Okie doke. Now we're on to the final step, which is the back part of the necklace. So we'll need some more stringing wire to get to the next part, but right now we have this with the little bridge with the crystal, our bead strands, then our seed beads between the rings, and the next one will be some more beads and maybe some more seed beads to finish up around the back of the neck. I have to make that decision still. So let's get to the next step, which will be stringing some beads onto these hoops to go into the back. And I think we're going to start with this bead, then this bead, and then this bead. And then we'll start getting some seed beads and some other beads back in the back here. And here's will be the other side. That will be how we're going to start to this side over here. So let's think about getting to that. And then we'll have to just make the decision on what beads we're going to finish it up with and how we're going to clasp it. Whether we want to use a toggle clasp or a lobster or a magnetic clasp. Haven't decided that yet. So let's get to this next section. Pulled out a few more little beads to finish this off. And we really don't need a lot more. So I am going to simply, uh-oh, what did I do with my little bead here? Gonna have to find that. There it is. I'm going to just get some more of the gold wire out and we're going to finish this up quickly. So we aren't going to need very much, maybe 4 or 5 inches for each side. So let's get that cut. And then we'll cut a second piece. Now, we're going to crimp this piece onto our ring on the other side. And again, we don't want it to be really tight because we want it to swing here. It has some motion. So we'll make it about as loose as the other side here. And then that's crimped. Trim it just a touch, though it probably doesn't need it because it's going to go into these big beads right here. I'm going to put this big orange one on and then move it over the wires. There we go. This little bead cap. This is one of the few things that wasn't from the set, and I'm going to actually trim that wire down just a touch more because this bead cap doesn't want to go over it. So there we go. Put this bead on, the bead cap, yellow bead, bead cap, orange bead, so bead cap here, two of the tiny orange ones that will match the 6/0 seed beads that will match the bead strand. Whoop. And that's what the top is going to look like. And now we will crimp that onto our magnetic clasp. and this side will be finished. Wow, I've got so much wire left over. I probably could have just used half of this wire, but that's fine. On it goes. Pull her down. Now this is a really strong little magnetic clasp. It doesn't look like much because it is small, but trust me, this sucker will hold. So crimp this side, and it's holding my pliers is what it's holding. Tuck test. It's pretty tight there, so we'll cut this extra wire off. And frankly, there's enough extra wire, I may just use this piece of wire instead of this one and put this side away. I think I've got enough here. Looks like I do. So now we want on this ring. See if this is about the same size. It looks like it is. So we'll crimp that. Cut off just a bit of this since it didn't like going through the little bead cap. Orange bead. Come on, babe. Bead cap. Yellow bead. Bead cap. Orange bead. Bead cap and the seed beads. And now we're crimping onto the clasp on the other side. Now if you don't want to crimp with it already, the magnet already done up, you can always pull it apart and stip it to the side, the other piece, so that it's, in fact, let's do that. You go over here. Through here, come on, baby, go through the beads. Maybe I'm pushing the wrong side. Yes, I was. All right, you'll get back down there. For some reason, this yellow bead does not want to take the wire through it a second time, so we will crimp it right here below this other seed bead. And as soon as we have this crimped, then our necklace will be finished. So let's get that crimped right now. As long as the magnet will let me. There we go. We'll do a tug test. That looks to be just fine and dandy, so we'll cut this extra string off, or beading wire, not string. And our necklace is done. So let's get that up and we'll look at it. There is our finished necklace. We'll get that on a bust so I can show it to you better. And there we go. Isn't that pretty? Okay. This has been Rose from In Rose's Garden, and we've been making the necklace from my Jessie James Beads September Ambassador Kit. Day of the Dead bead mix and Sunset Goddess bead mix. And this is our finished necklace. I hope you like that. I think it turned out pretty good. There you go. And I hope you enjoyed some of the techniques we used on this one, and maybe you can employ them in some of your own stuff. I enjoy it. And it was good seeing you. Again, Rose from In Rose's Garden, signing off for the day. Talk to you later.